Tell me when we're back. Looks like we're on Facebook now. We're on YouTube. And we're on Twitch. Okay. Okay, good.
You got some weird artifacts.
Huh. Yeah, that's bizarre. The problems we've been having with the stream.
What is that? You got all three cameras on right now?
No, just two.
Okay.
The problem we were having with the stream was related to like how it was recording. We were having like OBS like straight record to the hard drive, and then I would take those things and like update them, or like upload them to our FTP server. And once I turned that off, OBS stopped crashing. I was reading about it. There's an error or an issue with the current version of OBS and how it works with like NVIDIA graphics cards. So anyways, it doesn't matter. Now it's not recording, but we had a weird stream codec something, or I don't know. Now I have it set to rescale. So I think we're rescaling to 720, and that wasn't the problem. I think it was local recording that was the problem. That's the P3. This thing is super cool. This is about as far ahead as pinball technology has come in the innovation space. The ease of creating your own game using this platform is just easy. There's a huge community of people that work through this stuff and can help. It's awesome. These are really, really neat. And it's super easy to take apart. It's just very heavy. So this does have a really, really crazy bit of control though, right? We have an actual computer, we have an actual PC, we have some other pinball control electronics. So it's kind of like, it is centralized and decentralized in some really odd ways and places, but it is elegant and it works. Let's go back to the 80s with Elvira. This is a System 11 game. This is about as centralized as pinball electronics can get. System 11, which is what this is, and the WPC system, which came after this, are very similar, almost the same. But it is a little less centralized on one board. Here's a pro tip. Whenever you take your back glass out, I mean, generally I'll leave it on the game, but always put it outside down, not the inside down, because you can scratch things and break them. I see people do that the wrong way all the time. It makes me cringe. System 11 is a lot more centralized in the fact that our controller, I'm going to get this one on and close, and hopefully this one works. This is a lot more centralized because almost everything is done on one board. The original System 11 system, the original iteration of System 11 did not have this board or this board. The original System 11 setup was some displays. The entire logic and output on one board and a power supply. Let's do a quick tour around here and then move on. We've done this a million times on this show, but it is interesting to show because of how things have moved on. We have a transformer, a very heavy transformer down in the bottom of the cabinet that creates different AC voltages, which are then turned into different DC voltages, etc., by this power supply, which then feed everything else. This is a gigantic silicone pizza. It has all of the things to control lamps, solenoids. It does its own sound. It controls the entire thing with this set of chips here. These other big chips are all PIAs. They control other bits of this board. Williams realized very quick that the fidelity of sound needed to get better and they needed to put more, so they started decentralizing the sound system, taking it off of the central pizza and putting it onto a smaller board here. So now sound is done in 2 places. We have a what was called the auxiliary power supply, where Williams started to, instead of screwing fuses into the backboard, they made a whole board for them. And this board also contains diodes for solenoids. So then they didn't need to be on the coils anymore. It has these big driver transistors for things that need an oomph. So now you can be pushing balls up at these up kickers and stuff like that without destroying the smaller, weaker transistors that were blowing out a lot. So the System 11 was a response to operator concerns of the prior system being 2 boards, and that was very problematic. Let's put everything onto 1 board. Now as servicemen, if they have any issue with their logic or control, they take that old board out, switch the software onto the new board, plug it in, bring it back to the shop, the game's good, and then you can fix it on the bench, right? And then you can see how bloated it got. It started to become even more, it became what it was trying to replace, right? Now we have another soundboard, we have this auxiliary power supply, and the other power supply. This interconnect board allows you to remove the head from the game or the playfield from the game without having to do all this crazy stuff. And it became bloated and underpowered again. So then Williams moved on to another system that was a little more decentralized. The WPC system had a computer, an MPU, that was all of the logic stuff on 1 board. If you had a logic issue, then you could just remove a small board and leave all of the rest of the control or output electronics in the game. The WPC system had a giant controller board like this that controlled solenoids and lamps. It rectified. It was also the power supply. And they separated it so to ease serviceability, but also to allow the games to become more powerful and complex. So WPC had a computer, a power supply driver. Games had a whole flipper control board up here, a sound board, and a dot matrix controller. Again, these games were a lot more complicated than these. So things became a little bit more decentralized, but we still had a lot of giant silicone pizza up there. The other thing that's different about these games look at the amount of wire in here as well. I mean, this is just to run things around the back box. All the wires that go to the playfield are barely represented in what you're seeing in this picture right now. Most of them are underneath the head. All of those outputs are these plugs here, which are mostly under here. There's a ton of wire up here. That's expensive. Not only is that expensive, it's heavy. When we look at the underside of the playfield as well, it doesn't get much better. There's a lot of wires here, a ton of wire. As we know, like in a switch matrix, you need wires. A wire will run to one switch and then to another and then to another and another and another, a daisy chain. There are miles of wires inside these old games. Same thing with solenoid power. These wires are doubled up. There's a lot of wire in these games. You've got these big, heavy transformers. This persists into the System 11 era as well. The same design philosophy with the way the wires are run, the way the transformers exist. That was the cheapest and most effective way to get a product out the door that was serviceable and with the ease of manufacture. It's complicated, but it worked. So even though this is an 80 System 11 game, all of the WPC games from the same era, or from the later era, all of the Data East, Sega, and Stern games, basically, up until KISS and Ghostbusters and stuff, were all the same. Big, heavy transformer, tons of wire, giant centralized control boards in the back. It didn't really evolve that much. There's a lot going on. Now let's take a look. I think we'll look at Cactus Canyon last, but let's take a look at Stern's new system. I'm going to turn this around here. And then I'm going to try to move this here. Stern's current system, the spike system, is the simplest and most elegant pinball control system we've ever seen, because there's just not much going on. Let's take a look at it here. And we'll go over, again, this is a basic overview. We're not going to go over all the intricacies, but I want to show people who have never seen the inside of one of these games what I'm talking about when I say centralized, decentralized, stuff like that. Now again, remember, I think one of the most important things to remember about these Stern games is that, well, you'll see. Let me not spoil the fun. Fun fact, the head of every single Stern game is the same key. I always have one just in case. Let me move that camera a little bit. We'll bring it in nice and close. This is the back box of a Stern Spike 2 game. Spike 1 is very similar. Spike 1 is almost the same. The biggest difference with Spike 1, between Spike 1 and 2, the simplest difference is Spike 2 is set up with a more powerful processor and the ability to run LCD display. So not just a dot matrix. The last Stern dot matrix games are running the Spike 1 system. Games like Kiss and Ghostbusters. And that's all I can think of off the top of my head right now, but that ran on the Spike 1 system. But they're very similar. This is extremely elegant. Power comes in. Power goes into a switching power supply. It is filtered and then distributed to the game. Look at how few wires we have back here. The board we have back here is what we would refer to as node 0. It is the brains. This board here is responsible for doing all of the thinking and running the software that the game uses to make magic in pinball. The reason why we have so few wires on these Stern games is because it uses a bus system. Data is piped out and in using these RJ45 connectors, similar like what you would have for internet at home, your Cat5, Cat6 style connectors. The really interesting thing about this game, though, is that everything runs on 48 volts. It really only has one voltage that travels around throughout the game. The computer up here runs on 48 volts and then steps it down to the voltages required to run the computer. All localized, right? So this is important when we go down and look. But note, again, please, like there are very few wires in this game. One thing people like to complain about is like, oh, I can't reach the power switch on my Stern game. Well, one of the reasons that was done was like not only to save on wire, but to have the certifications to, with electronics, many different countries are very different on how they certify electronics. Having it all, close, tight packed in the back of the game was one of the reasons why it was done that way. Wire is also expensive, so running wires back and forth costs all sorts of money. Let's lift this playfield up. And you can see how simple, again, a modern pinball playfield is. You've got considerable less amount of wire in the whole package. This still may look a little overwhelming, but let's see like what is coming into the game, right? This is the only thing here at the bottom that I can't get in frame. This is what attaches the cabinet to the rest of the game. We have our bus wire, our Cat5 wire here. We have wires that provide power, and then I forget what some of these other wires do, but again, there is not much of a tail on this playfield. Fun fact, it's like you go into the back, you unplug your Cat6 wire, you unplug these three connectors right here. You can take this entire playfield out of the game, and it's ready to be serviced or something else. All of these wires exist locally. And how do they do that? With that bus system, one of those wires from the back of the head, one of those Cat6 wires runs up into here. It plugs into one of the core nodes, and then it daisy chains up to the other core node. The computer can send out data, and it can be intercepted where it is required. I'm not an electrical engineer. I'm not going to try to talk about this. I get it up here. I'll try to make it coherent. But if the game is trying to send a signal to, hey, shoot the left flipper, that data is going to travel through here into this board. This board is going to check. It's like, oh, is this signal for me? Nope. It keeps going up through here. The board's going to say, hey, is that signal for me? Oh, crap. Yes, it is. Fire the flipper. And this happens all within, like, fractions of a millisecond, and you'll never notice any sort of a lag. But that allows you to do a whole lot with less. These boards also all run on that same 48 volts, which is then stepped down to the required voltages to run these localized. But you can see there's a lot less going on here. Pinball companies, especially in the 90s, they started to eliminate tons of discrete sockets and started putting a lot of lamps onto boards. So this is node 9, or node 8. Node 8 will, there are data signals for some of these LEDs, and there's also serial data cables that will come out and start sending that information to these lamps, which will then be intercepted and used and shown the lights where they need to be. The interesting thing about this system too is, like, in theory, it's also very modular. Almost every single game that Stern has ever created with the Spike 2 system runs off of 2 core nodes. Each of these core nodes can drive 9 solenoids. And that is why you'll generally have 2. And as a rough rule of thumb, you could say, well, this one here kind of controls the back half of the playfield, and this one here controls this half of the playfield. It's not always 100% true. There are maps provided with these games to show you which signals and where the data cables come from to figure out where the data is going. But this would be kind of a decentralized system, right? You don't have a giant control board in the back that requires all the data to be piped in and out. It is very decentralized. You have the thinking portion and the doing portion, and the doing portion's right on the playfield, so you can use a whole lot less wire. Does that make sense? I haven't read the chat in a minute. Everyone's like, dude, shut up. You're talking too fast. Pinball's expensive. I wouldn't start discounting things just yet. It would be cool to have multiple sets of score reels, but it ain't cheap. Yeah, I don't agree 100% with the distributed surface mount control stuff. I mean, it's the same thing I heard from those old timers back in they were talking about how hard it is to fix a Bally game when they were used to working on the electromechanical stuff. It's I don't understand a lot of this stuff yet, but the entire world has moved on past surface or through-hole components years ago. The thing is a lot of these older games are going to start becoming extremely difficult to repair in their own right, because those ancient packages are starting to disappear. The world has moved on past through-hole a long time ago, and we're just so used to it still. And for the past 30 years, if not more, surface mount chips have become available, much cheaper to produce and also much cheaper to just work with. That being said, I'm not saying you shouldn't be nervous, because it's a whole different set of skills. Things have gotten a lot smaller, which does inherently make them a little more difficult to work on. But we do know of a few cases of some things being wonky on some games, like with the Rush. We talked to George Gomez about that, where there was an error in the factory, how they were crimping wires. That seems to be solved now. Thankfully, they're rushing out kits for Rush. But if we go back and get away from that, if we talked about like the repairability of these things too, I'm not going to lie. I know that there are a lot of supply chain issues, and it is difficult to get boards sometimes out of Stern right now for certain things, but they're very much aware and working on that. But in a perfect world where these parts are very readily available currently, it is very simple to repair a drive problem. If we had a transistor or something that is localized to one of these core nodes that has failed, all you have to do is have one of these little core nodes with you to be able to bring with you to repair your game. Unplug, unscrew, reinstall, good to go. Unlike gigantic silicone pizza in a game like Elvira. But yeah, I think it's the repairability threshold that is very high with these games. But it does use some very advanced concepts that a lot of seasoned pinball repair people aren't 100% comfortable with. They don't understand fully yet. And I don't either. I'm not going to pretend like I understand all of this. I've been fed bits and pieces of it over the past 7-8 years, and I'm starting to get a better hand at it. But, you know, serial data, it's like, what's that? We'll learn one day. But the nice thing about these games is that they are reliable. They are easy to repair. Again, some people may criticize and say, well, easy to repair, well, what, you're just swapping boards. Is that repairing? Well, one day we will learn how to fix everything. But this is new. This is the way things are moving. And again, it's very elegant. Now we can look at something that's a little different from the Stern system too. A lot of people are probably familiar with these remade Williams games. Almost the only thing that is the same between a real Cactus Canyon and a remade Cactus Canyon is some of the playfield parts. Not all of them are. I've just noticed, and I didn't notice before, actually the side rails on a Chicago gaming game are not the same technically as a Williams one. These ones use screws to attach into the cabinet, where the Williams ones used 2 screws at the front and back, and then double-sided tape. So technically this is a different, even though you could just put a 90s Williams one on, it would be fine. You just wouldn't have the screws in there, whatever. Other things, like on this game, Williams used a magnetic reed switch for some of the ramp switches. You'll find those commonly also on like NBA Fast Break. They're weird and not easy to source, so Chicago Gaming came up with a better solution for some of those switches, and but that's what I'm saying. Some of these things aren't 100% the same. Most of the physical parts are, but some of the other things might not be. So definitely use caution and use your parts manual if you have a Chicago Gaming remake to make sure that you are getting the correct piece, and don't just assume it's all a total one-to-one with the Williams stuff. Chicago Gaming has a great support team also, so when in doubt, you can ask, you know, people, them, what is the same, what do I need? If they don't have the part, maybe we have it. Anyways, let's look at the brain of a Chicago Gaming game. Funnily enough, they actually built this the exact same way as the Williams games, with the light tub, just without using all of the lamps because LEDs are so much brighter. But back here we have, this is their own homegrown system. I don't know a lot about this, so I'm not going to pretend like I do and go into too much detail, but it's kind of interesting because it seems like it's a mixture of a bus system, but not at the same time. We have a controller here. I'm going to assume, from what I do know about these games, that this is basically, this is the brain. Looks like there are some pass-throughs here, right? I mean, these LEDs probably run between 3 to 6 volts. So it takes some of that voltage from here and sends it out for the lamps. We do have two data cables here, some Cat6. Let me see if I can get this closer so you guys can see. We'll spend just a little bit of time in here. And if I do that, all right, perfect. Brain, drive. This game does have a transformer. This game also has a power supply underneath, which we'll see in a second. But we've got these data cables. We've got one data cable here that sends signals from the brain to the driver, which connects right here. All of these wires do go down to drive solenoids. It looks like they're done similar in a Williams fashion to have banks of them, banks of 4 to 6 fused. I'm going to assume that there's also some sort of lamp control, but I don't know. There is a lot of through-hole componentry here, and it's a mix of both. And Stern did the same thing. With their node boards, you have through-hole MOSFETs to drive solenoids, but then also all sorts of surface mount logic or sort of chips. Same here, though, but we do have some through-hole stuff. We do have all these drivers are through-hole. We do have some logic chips here that are through-hole, with also having a mixture of surface mount stuff as well. It looks like some of these voltages, you do have like some bridge rectifiers and voltage regulators up here as well. So I'm assuming that we have AC power here. It does. It says transformer. We have some AC voltages coming in here, which are then rectified and regulated to be usable voltages. Pretty interesting. We have a CC Sol. Going to assume that that's a solenoid driver chip. I don't know what that does. You'd assume that a lot of the coding would probably be on some sort of a flash card or something on the brain. But you'll be even more surprised when we actually lift the playfield and look at something else down here. This is also really cool. These games are gorgeous underneath. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a second. I guess I don't want to say it's like a combination of old and new, but it kind of is. Just like this game is. It's a new version of a 20-year-old pinball machine. So take a look at that. Pretty crazy. What are we looking at here? This tripped me out the first time I saw one of these things when they came out. Basically, we have all the same device-wise, right? This is very similar to any of your Williams games because they use the same parts. The auto launch is a Williams auto launch. The trough, the flippers, the slingshots, the up posts, the single drop target mechs, they're all the same. But look at this. This gigantic board underneath does a lot. So I don't 100% understand. I'm going to try not to say things I don't know, but I'll try to point out things that I notice, right? We do have one of those data cables from the brain coming down here, plugging in. We have a playfield chip here. Now I know what's funny is I had a customer that had a Medieval Madness and they wanted the color display. So they purchased the color display chip. And I think it's this one that you have to replace. So there is something, it says PF, the other one said Sol, so solenoid program. You've got a playfield program, I'm not sure, but this does a lot. It's obviously the surface mount LEDs for all of the inserts in the center of the playfield. But this board is definitely a I/O board. It is taking inputs and giving outputs. The solenoids are driven straight from the solenoid driver board, right? We did have all those orange and purple wires. And then those run, to all of our solenoids. So this isn't driving solenoids, but this is definitely driving lights. I'm assuming it's also taking in switch inputs and reporting those back to the brain somehow, probably using this data cable here. But yeah, this was really surprising to me the first time I saw one. Medieval Madness and Attack from Mars are basically the same. They have one gigantic silicone pizza in the center that does stuff. And yeah, so that's the thing is like I was thinking while I was trying to figure out what we were going to do today. It's like centralized versus decentralized computing. And I'm going to have to say that this is a crazy mix of both. These games are very reliable. I have serviced a decent handful of Chicago gaming remakes. And not one of those calls was ever for like any sort of a strange electronic fault. Most of the calls that I've had on these games were for basic mechanical failures, right? You know, our flippers and our other sorts of solenoid-driven things. And I'm not an electrical engineer, and I'm not an engineer. I'm just an idiot that works on pinball games. But it does make me nervous having electronics on a playfield. That being said, I've never ever had a problem with any of these things. But you know, we do have electronics and vibrations generally don't get along. Electronics and ferrous dust don't generally get along, and we have a combination of those underneath on these games. Chicago Gaming Company has been manufacturing things for years and years and years and years. Only Pinball on the last couple, if you don't count Vacation America, but you know, Chicago Gaming has made all of the Arcade Legends video game cabinets, you know, the 1001 video games. And people much smarter than I have deemed this to be okay. But yeah, interesting though, right? We do have, you know, computing and driving in the head. We do have some sort of driving underneath the playfield, even though it's not for high voltage devices. We definitely still have lamps and switches being driven. So yeah, pinball amongst the ages.
Is that chip socketed?
Which chip? The big one?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think this chip is also the one you would have to change if you wanted the color display. Because I remember doing that on the Medieval Madness and Attack from Mars one of my customers had.
So I guess it's in there pretty tight. I mean, even with all the shaking and stuff that goes on.
Yeah. Steve was asking if this chip was socketed. And we were chatting about if, you know, how secure it is with the vibration of a playfield and stuff. And it's fine. I mean, with all of the... Now, again, let's talk about surface mount stuff, right? The only through-hole things on this board are these capacitors for whatever reason, but they're also tied down to the board. So one great thing about surface mount stuff is that they're light and very small, and they don't need to be... I don't know, they're just very secure. So again, smarter people have deemed that all of this stuff is A-okay to have on a playfield. And I mean, when did the Medieval Madness remake come out? 2015? 2014? Anyone remember? It's they've been working for a while, and there hasn't been a gigantic, you know, uproar of people complaining on the pin side or you know wherever people complain now about these things failing in droves. So if an LED isn't working, well, I'm pretty sure just like Stern, all of these LEDs have redundant LEDs next to them. So it's not just one LED lighting, it's like 2 or 3. So if one of them ever went bad, you still have another 2. And generally, LEDs don't go bad. Always, but they can and they do, but not always. But yes, that is kind of crazy. There's a lot of components on this board. We have LEDs in sockets that stick above the playfield, and that's why we have this big bus wire here in these sockets that I'm kind of poking around the playfield. LED or inserts that can't be covered by the gigantic silicone pizza have their own boards screwed in to illuminate LEDs. We have a couple auxiliary boards down here. But if we discounted this gigantic bit of silicone here, and we parsed it down into some smaller ones, this is exactly what a original Williams Cactus Canyon looks like. Just all of the computing is in the head and separated from the playfield. We do have a power supply down here, or maybe it's not a power supply, but it's some sort of a big filter. I'm not 100% sure how these games distribute power. There is a transformer in the back of the cabinet, but some of that AC juice comes up here. Just like a Williams game of this era, it uses the opto-controlled flipper boards. Everything else is pretty similar to how the original games were, except for the driving electronics. Even the playfield latch.
Dustin Ray said that his Medieval Madness has been en route for 8 years with no issues. He just had to replace it.
Yeah, and I think that's the general consensus, right? Like, that's the thing is, like, I can sit here and cry a foul and be like, what the hell is all this stuff? This doesn't look right. None of this looks right. And I think that's the general consensus, right? Like, that's the thing is, like, I can sit here and cry a foul and be like, what the hell is all this stuff? Turn off your voice. Hello, Omoto.
Hello. I have returned.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, you know, like, it doesn't look right. We can cry a foul of it, but again, people have them en route for 8 years getting played, and there's not a problem.
And you really can't stand in the way of progress. I mean, you can cry about no through-holds all you want, but I mean, everything's going SMD.
Mm-hmm. No, within all of most of our lifetimes. Oh, sorry, I'm standing in my camera box. Within most of our lifetimes, through-hole components will go away, right? I mean, it's just like old-timers complaining about tubes, right? Like, we don't use tubes anymore, but the tubes were extremely commonplace in the 40s, 30s, 50s, 60s, 70s. We don't use that anymore. We went to through-hole solid-state electronics, and that's old now, you know? Uh-oh, Chicago Gaming Company is here. Thank you. I'm so glad.
The Sony cameras.
The power supplies the 12 volts, and the transformer supplies the clean high power to the coils. Okay, interesting. So can you inform me, on the solenoid driver board, it looks like there's a few rectifiers and regulators. I'm assuming that is where the power for the coils is going. You're getting a nice filtered 48 or 50 volts there. It's interesting. I really need to sit down and look at the schematics because it's fascinating. But now I'm glad we have representatives. But yeah, we can all sit and cry about surface mount stuff going away and things being different, but that's progress, right? That is where electronics are moving. You talk to an old operator, an older pinball enthusiast, if you will, and a lot of them will cry the same thing about, how am I ever going to learn how to repair electronics? I don't understand, and everyone got along, right? So now we are all learning how to work on new systems too. The great thing about these newer systems also is they're very good at telling you what's wrong. You know, when my Elvira doesn't work, it might flash an LED in a weird way or not flash an LED, and then it's my job to figure out what the hell happened. You know, when a Stern Games goes bad, it'll say, hey, I can't talk to Node 8. You better go check that. I've never had a Chicago Gaming game tell me anything was wrong other than, again, broken flippers and stuff like that. So I'm sure it also has some internal diagnostic. But
Thanks, James.
yeah,
In
I know.
audio.
Cooling fans needed. I don't think the Chicago Gaming games have any fans to cool because it doesn't use a total switching power supply like Stern does. We were just informed that the transformer, and there is another power supply inside, but it doesn't require cooling. But that's also different philosophies on how things were laid out, right? Stern wanted to keep all of what would be considered the higher voltage in the head away from people's fingers for a UL certification that was required in some country. Maybe Finland says you can't import stuff unless this is this way, so Stern is going to try to engineer it all one way perhaps. Where Chicago Gaming made a very close actual replica of a Williams game, but modernizing it in ways that were necessary and made sense. So again, you've got the power switch in the same spot. The transformer feeds up the solenoid board where it's distributed. The 12-volt low voltage powers the computer electronics. Interesting. So here you go. We have
Nice.
3 modern games sitting here that do things all very differently. And then our classic, which would be our benchmark, which is done very similar to how most pinball was done in the 70s and 80s. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, Evil Knievel is a beautiful game.
I love that
JS
game.
Rock. Classic.
Evil Knievel's pretty rad.
I'm just gonna break all my bones and get paid for it. People pay for that, right? You break a bone,
You pay for it, yeah, but he did it for enjoyment. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting, right? We have, I don't know, did anyone else find that interesting? I thought it was kind of fun to look at all these different games here. We're kind of lucky to have, 3 modern manufacturers manufacturing games, and then, all these older games that we look at on this show all the time. American Pinball does things very different as well. Spooky Pinball does things very different as well. Using different hardware, but it's all very similar. Now I'm reading the chat because y'all are talking a lot.
Nice. And if we want to do a episode with Chicago Gaming, I just got texted that we could set that up too.
Yes, I would love that. While we have Cactus Canyon here, let's learn a little bit more about their technology. And I'm very thankful that someone's in the chat. So.
Oh yeah, it's Ryan White.
Oh, that's Ryan. Hey, Ryan. Thanks
Can
for
I
joining.
say that, Ryan? Too late. Yay, Ryan's here. So, I don't know. Maybe we could potentially do next Thursday, but I think show season is right around the corner, so everyone is like in crazy mode right now. So we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
Yay! Yeah, the teaser dropped with Pulp Fiction. It was so cool. It was like the scrolling credits. I'm so excited. TPF is going to be nuts. And MGC is going to be nuts. I hope everyone is coming.
I think the spooky game that I have runs on P-Rock, which this game partially runs on. But P-Rock is similar. Just to give the description of the only other thing I do know about, P-Rock does kind of work on a serial node setup, sort of. But you do have, for the lamps at least, the P-Rock system can control a bazillion lamps, but the P-Rock system for my TNA, Spooky is now using a different hardware system that's homegrown, not P-Rock, but it does have a controller, a brain, and then it does have a driver board, which is all the outputs for solenoids and whatnot. And then there's a bunch of lighting hardware underneath, mounted on the playfield. So again, it's kind of like, if we had to continue comparing things, I mean, it's very much like this game, but more so like Cactus Canyon, where it's not 100% centralized and distributed a little bit more. But not to the level of like a Stern game where you have only one thing in the back and then everything else is underneath. Yeah, pinball, it's confusing. The thing is once you learn to work on electronics, or you start to learn cause and response to a lot of issues in pinball, it's generally easy to switch between systems. If I know how to fix things like on my Bally game, or I only have Bally games, but someone calls me and says, "Hey, my Elvira is doing this." Sometimes you can translate that. You just need to understand the minutia of that system, but they're very similar. I think someone asked a long time ago, like, what is your favorite pinball system? My favorite is definitely the Bally systems, the old one like my Viking back there, Lady Luck, the 6803 stuff.
6803.
It's very easy. It's very easy. Whereas some of this, because with the Bally systems, at least the old Bally system, you had the computer, you had the lamp driver, you had the solenoid driver and power supply. And it's easy to isolate those problems to one of those 3 boards if you know what's going on. Games like Elvira are very difficult sometimes to troubleshoot because everything is on one board, so you can't easily try to isolate things. Well, it's a little more difficult or involved how to isolate some of these things certain times. So I just would. It's a little bit of learning. It took a lot of listening and not talking or doing from people smarter than me to learn this stuff. So pinball machines are like the helicopters of the video game world. No, helicopters should not work. There is nothing in a helicopter that should work.
I don't know. I think it's really funny.
Pinball does work.
True, right?
Pinball does work. Helicopters are terrifying. Pinballs in Austin. Yes, Pinballs is a big institution in Austin.
Could we do an episode one day just looking at all those crazy test units we have? I was like messing around with the Bally 6803 one. I'm like, oh my God, these are so beautiful.
Yeah, they're interesting. But they're
like
it's
museum
just
pieces.
a pinball machine. It's a pinball machine without any of the pinball. I would like to get some of them working, I guess. But yeah, people have asked me that before. It's like, well, do you have any test fixtures? And like, no, I don't need any test fixtures because this is the test fixture. Test fixtures were like a step removed for like the operator. If the operator couldn't fix it on location, you replace something, and then maybe you would send that board back to a distributor. And the distributor would have a test fixture, which would allow you to have a pinball runtime environment, but without the game there, or something like that. You know, so it's they're neat. They're a fun oddity, but
Beautiful.
not necessary for people that like work on games. Helicopters should not work. Dude, it's true. I mean, do you guys know how helicopters work? They're insane.
I think helicopters is a very high percentage of camera operator deaths.
Oh, I'm
is from
sure.
helicopter crashes.
I've been in a helicopter one
The
time.
most
I will
common.
never, ever, ever go on a helicopter again. My chances of dying are like 1,000 times higher.
It happens a lot, unfortunately. Dang.
I like flying helicopters in simulator games. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Pilot wings.
Pilot wings, hell yeah.
That game is so hard.
It is hard.
It is so hard.
So yeah, okay. Someone said very interesting, so I guess that's good. David, I am hers. Hey, what's up, dude? Who's going to TPF? Me and Emoto definitely are.
Yay.
Test fixture for node boards would be great. It would be. And Stern has them, and they are working on that stuff. I'm not going to
JS
say
Rock.
anymore, just in case I'm not allowed to say anymore. But that
Come to a pinball show. We shall show you the way of pinball. It's fun learning new stuff. So he said, pinball machines have always fascinated, overwhelmed me. Like when I play them, but have no clue what each piece does or how do players score on them. How or why do people nudge the machines?
So
They always
that's
confuse
part of the fun of pinball, right? Is that you know
Always
every
nudge.
game's different, and I mean, just like any game, you need to. The more you play, the more you understand to learn about that specific game. You know, outside of basic things
So
in
many
pinball, like the flipper control, controlling the ball and stuff like that. I mean, every game is different. There are a lot of great tutorials
Ooh,
around.
watch Abe Flips on YouTube.
Yeah, link Abe Flip's channel. Each machine
He
operates
has
differently.
the
Yes,
best
the
tutorials.
rules to James Bond are very different to the rules of Cactus Canyon or Addams Family. So that's one of the fun challenges is that you get to you have to learn each game. And not only on top of that, you talk about nudging the game. each game is set up differently. Some games, you may be able to put a lot of English into the game to try to force that ball a different direction than towards certain doom. But in some locations where you're playing, they might be set up so tight that, what you would think is a mild amount of English is going to tilt the game out. So.
Yeah, no game plays the same. It could be the same title and theme, but the environment even changes how a pinball machine works.
So if you check out that YouTube link that was just posted, is a German fella that does these incredible, not tutorial, well, they are kind of tutorials, but like lessons on some certain more advanced flipper controls. And your mind will be blown, just like Colin says, about some of the things you can do with the flippers once you train and learn. Now, again, it's like, you always have to think about this too, is like, to outsiders, pinball is crazy. And I think pinball turns a lot of people off in an arcade setting because it's seemingly everything is against you. And I think one trick of learning pinball is to learn how to take advantage of the machine. Taking advantage of how to give it that little bit of English, or how to stop the ball, and how to learn where to shoot. And when you try to take the control back from the game, that's when you are in power to beat the machine. Though, at the end of the day, gravity always wins. According to the internet, helicopters are still safer than cars, but I want to reject that. I am with you. I reject that reality, and I will substitute my own reality, which is no. That's my favorite way to play pinball, is just to smack the flippers and see what happens, Okay, sorry, I've been talking a lot now. I think I had some fun time. I got really anxious when I was talking about Chicago gaming and being like, I don't get this, but they did it. And then Ryan shows up and I'm like, uh-oh. But again, I know people that have had those Medieval Madness remakes on location for, again, like that guy in the chat said, 8 years. Not a single electronics problem. They're reliable. They had a talented electrical engineer come through and make that system work. So we learned a lot. Bright flashy lights make it difficult to focus on the ball. Yes, very much so. Yeah, dude, seriously. It's like a 50-50 chance. Anyways, let's not talk about helicopters. Now I'm thinking about that one time I was in a helicopter and I don't like it.
Where did you go?
Hell yeah. In the hills, in a discrete location in Northern California where I got to shoot guns out of a helicopter.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
So you just basically got it all out of your system all at once. Did you jump out of the helicopter too and parachute down?
No, definitely not.
Oh.
I had a ex-girlfriend whose parents were sheriff's department people, so got to do some crazy stuff. Yeah, no, that's all the adrenaline I need out of. If I'm gonna ride in a helicopter once in my life, that's exactly what I needed, and that was good.
No, I like that question.
What was the question?
Coolest effect you've seen on a machine that immediately took you back to childlike wonderment and excitement.
Dude, so that actually is a great question, and it's probably the only reason I still own my game called Twilight Zone. I remember very vividly as a single-digit child playing the Twilight Zone pinball game where you shoot the ball and it immediately goes into a scoop. And then it is returned to you at the flipper through another scoop somewhere else on the playfield. And it blew my mind as a kid, like how the hell did that happen? And that is what started my fascination with pinball. It's very simple, right? No crazy magnets. grabbing the ball and launching them in directions, or crazy mechanical buildings falling into the playfield and delivering you a multi-ball. It was just a ball going in somewhere and then coming back somewhere else, and that blew my mind. A scoop is you shoot the ball, it goes up a lane, and it falls into something else, and then it rolls to another section of the playfield and gets shot back out right towards your flipper.
You can get the handheld and just show on one of those games sitting next to you.
I don't think any of these games have a
Pinball
scoop.
terminology.
James Bond does. Does it? Yeah, but it's under a mine.
You gotta lift up the whole.
Under a mine.
I haven't seen any of it yet. Oh, James Bond's scoop is backwards. No, I'll show it. Here, let's do this. We'll show
Field
some scoopers.
trip. I had to.
The camera's going to be sideways too, so sorry.
Can you turn on the light?
Yeah.
Please, sir. Please, sir.
You got a scoop. Something where the ball can fall into.
That looks so weird. It, like, not knowing that is a scoop, I would not look at that and be like, oh, there's a scoop.
You can't see it really.
Because the camera is sideways, so it just looks...
There's another scoop in here, but something that catches the ball and then poops it out.
Oops.
I guess actually this one is a pretty decent one to show it on here. Here's a scoop that's facing the right direction, I guess. But you shoot the ball in, it falls into this pocket right here and can be held. So.
Show it from the top real quick too.
The mine. Keep out.
It's a mine.
I think that's what I still find fascinating about modern pinball. And we kind of touched on this a minute ago.
Yeah, it is an ejector seat.
When we were talking about just like, how pinball games are designed. And it's like, other than like the ways that the games are controlled, pinball's changed very little in the last 30 years. There are some unique mechanisms that do some crazy things now, but that's what's so neat about pinball as a creative outlet, is even with these very simple things, and not only simple things, but like the constraints that you are stuck with building a pinball game, like what you can do. Like now, I've only been playing pinball, since I was a kid. I'm only 33. Some of these people have been playing. Some people have been playing pinball since they were kids in the 60s, right? But it's still like there is something in the game that is so inherently interesting, like that it's just always magical, Even with the same things, the pinball game consists of the same flippers and the same slingshots and the same these things, and you put them on different parts of the playfield, and you just get a totally different experience, and that's what's so dang cool about it. How many people wear gloves when they play, and do you feel different? Yeah, you're totally a badass if you wear some sweet gloves.
Helps the grip hang on to the machine.
Pinball all went downhill with solid
No.
state. Oh, I'm glad you're here, JS Rock. I'm glad you're here, and you got to see some funny pinball stuff today. So, like, to be honest, like, I would prefer to have all EMs. Like, if I had to like have games at home, I would probably want like all electromechanical games, because they are really interesting. The difficulty is very high on those games. I very much like electromechanical games. I think the thing is like with a lot of people who aren't a psychopath like me, if you just have one game and it's an EM, you'll get very bored of it super quick. So I always tell people they should get EMs, but it's a good second game or a good third game. The modern games have so much replayability and so many different journeys you can take, where some of the older games, even the games in the 90s, they're very linear. They have a very linear path, what you're supposed to do, what you need to do to progress through the game, where the electromechanical games are similar. They don't really have paths, but the way to get the best scores are generally to do one or two different things, but the inherent design of them, they're brutal. They're brutal.
I feel like I'm being set up for a giant joke. I got to see the He-Man one with the giant Kenny on it.
I want to read that, but I'm not because it'll be funny.
Oh, no, neither.
I do have that's what I try to do at home is have like a spread of games. I've got, electromechanical games and 80s games and 90s games and 2010s games. I've kind of got a little bit of everything.
The giant launcher?
Giant launcher thing. Terminator and Star Trek had some giant launchers.
Hyperball?
Anyways, I've been talking a lot. I'm sorry if this has kind of gone off track now, but
That sounds awesome.
oh, Emoto, while you were gone, we got taught something by Jordan and someone else in the chat who owns a multimorphic game.
Yeah.
How extremely easy it is to remove the lower third, which would be the flippers and the slingshots. You unplug a plug and then you yank it out. So we got to look at it really close up on camera. It was incredible.
Dang. I missed the good part.
You definitely missed the good part. It was fun.
It's awesome.
Fireball is a inherently nasty, brutal game, especially with that spinner in the middle. I like Fireball, though. That's one of my favorite games. We had one at the Pacific Pinball Museum that was modified with a gigantic bell on the top of the game. So whenever you got rolled over to 10,000, the gigantic bell would go gong. And it was very fun. Scared of EMs, you'll electrocute yourself? Yes, you will, but you'll also electrocute yourself on any pinball machine if you're not totally careful. So everyone should own an EM. Electromechanical games are very rewarding to fix. Electromechanical games very much have a direct action and response, which are very gratifying. A lot of the repair or fixing you'll do on computerized or solid-state pinball games are very, I don't know, it's methodical. Where electromechanical stuff, right? Like my Grand Prix the other day, the 500-point scoring, the bell, the chimes were just crap. You go back there and you look and you take a look at that 100-point relay, which is pulsed 5 times when you hit 500 points, and you look and you actuate it and you see what it's doing. You find the switch that is for the chime and you clean it, you adjust it ever so slightly, and then you hit that 500-point switch again, and then it's just a perfect crisp ding, 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 ding. And it's so rewarding to work on those sorts of things and to find those gremlins and to work them out. It's more rewarding to me than being like, yeah, Elvira has a burnt out up kicker coil. Okay, well, you replace the tip 102, and you replace the 2 and 4401. Okay, now it's done. And it's rewarding in its own respect because you get the game working again, but it's less like hands-on. It's less like 100% like instant gratification response. I don't know. I don't know if EMs are easier to work on. It's more confusing and intimidating from the get-go, but they're easier to work on in the sense that, like, most of the time electromechanical games don't require different, all sorts of parts to repair. A sword hit the launch. What's the game? Is Game of Thrones?
It was a really large machine. Hercules?
I mean, Hercules is the largest of machines. I don't think they have Hercules at pinballs, though.
Swords of
Maybe they might
That's not
actually.
large. It doesn't have a sword.
It's only large if you think about it. Just kidding.
What? I don't know. I don't disagree with you, but I definitely think that like electromechanical games absolutely are more intimidating when you're starting out, but there's also some people that just can't get it, and it's also vice versa. We have like the amazing Mark Gibson. When I was in California last time, we were both at the Pacific Pinball Museum, and I taught Mark Gibson how to figure out how to replace a solenoid, a transistor on a Bally game, right? I mean, he doesn't understand that. He knows electromechanical stuff, but he hasn't spent a ton of time on the solid state stuff. So I taught him the way to figure it out with a manual, without a manual, and how to solder on a circuit board, right? So I think it's just, some people are definitely more in tune with one thing than another. Sometimes things click. All of my cars when I was young were fuel injected, right? And I had to learn how to fix these, I had to learn how to fix cars. And as soon as I got my first motorcycle, which was carbureted, I was like, what the hell's this? There's so many different ways to do things, and sometimes things click for some people and sometimes they don't. And also, some people have passions that lie in one place more than another. Some people's passions rely with the nostalgia of an electromechanical machine as opposed to a more modern machine. That's not where your interests are. I know plenty of people that only own older carbureted motorcycles and have zero interest in trying to figure out how those dang computers work with fuel injectors, right? And it just depends on what you're into.
Just like on Discord.
What am I doing on Discord?
You never answered Draugr.
I'm checking Discord now.
Oh, come on, Draugr. You distracted him.
Oh, crap.
Oh,
Yes.
I should look to see who we should raid. Anyone have
Yes,
any?
I will. Draugr, you can totally have
suggestions?
some of those Elvira plastics. I will give you some. I'll send them to you. We'll make it happen.
California birds.
I'm sorry.
Do it. Burbs.
Burbs?
Midge wants the birds. I mean, the birds are cool. I didn't mean to say it so disappointingly.
I can't even change the gas on these new space cars. Whoa, wait, is Warlock Pinball's playing? Can we check?
I'm checking.
All right. That's fine. Cool. Let's do it.
Yeah,
It's like
let's raid
echoing.
Cliff. I love that dude. Hold on, we can't leave just yet though. There's chats.
Oh my gosh. No. Why did you say no?
Thanks, mate.
Cliff
Thanks for
was
coming and joining us,
last night.
JS Rock. Keep going to pinballs. Meet some of those people. Austin is probably one of the coolest places to play pinball in Texas.
Digiradio seems like a cool dude, man. I want to hang out with him.
Everyone here is a pretty cool person.
Digiradiome is awesome.
Yes.
I know personally. And
Yeah,
he
dude,
should stop.
my old BMW motorcycles, like my toolkit was like a spark plug wrench and a screwdriver, and you could basically fix everything. If you needed anything else, you were effed and you needed to get towed back home. So
We should send everyone to the North American Pinball Championship that's live at District 82, right? I mean,
They got enough viewers.
yeah, they have enough people there. We should go see someone who like.
but
is a-
Dalton is doing commentary right now.
Oh, Dalton? Oh,
That
man.
changes everything.
Yeah, that changes things. Dalton, I'm the president of the Dalton fan club. Dalton, #1 pinball player in my heart and in actuality. So let's all go support Dalton.
Oh, good. So we don't have to feel bad about not getting Warlock because he's just playing music videos.
Yeah, what is it, like 1990 music
Right,
videos?
what is this, MTV? No.
Yeah,
it's
no.
Twitch.tv.
Yeah, twitch.tv, and we Twitch, I don't know. Pinball championships, that's cool, that's fine. I think that's a good idea, especially if Dalton's there. Everyone say hi to Dalton.
Oh, JS Rock, you're so sweet.
Cheers, mate.
Yay, thank you. We stream every Thursday at 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, JS Rock. Come back to Pinball School.
Follow now.
Follow now. Yeah, follow. They already followed us, so thank you. Oh, Pirate Princess Jess followed us too.
Yay.
What a day. What a day. No,
You guys
it's
want to
good.
see how cool the Weird Al topper is? Hold on.
Yeah, I'm
Before we
surprised
go.
you didn't show off all the mechs inside of that thing.
Well, there's not much to show because they're all hidden or...
No, you can see it through the sides. I was not messing around with it. I was looking at it. I didn't touch it.
Hey, thanks, mate. We got a subscription. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, JS Rock. I really
Here,
appreciate
look at
it.
this thing. So, it's apart because, unfortunately, a portion of the topper was broken when it got here.
Can
or
you,
it-
Kyle, do me a favor and do it in this camera?
Here's the topper. Unfortunately, one portion of it broke when it got here. This thing, and it's partially disassembled. There's a big piece of art here and some more to the accordion, but I took it apart. Okay, most of it is bolted back together. But check this thing out. Look how crazy it is. I'm going to try to turn it so you can sort of see, but it is an accordion with an accordion set of arms here. This thing is incredible. When the thing that broke was unfortunately probably the designed weak point. It was the collar between the motor and the actual things that work the accordion. But when the motor turns, good old Weird Al himself goes side to side, and his accordions. This is the coolest thing. This is a topper.
That's great.
Got
Yeah,
some
push it to the side. Yeah,
drive
the back.
electronics here. You've got the entire mechanism
Yeah.
here. So it's one motor that drives all of this
That's
craziness. It is amazing, and it's hilarious. And he just goes. So
Cool.
yeah, I don't know if you can see in here, but
Yeah.
it was hard to take apart. But there's a gray piece down here where my finger is. It's
Yeah.
a 3D printed collar, and unfortunately, it was either got tweaked in shipping, and when the motor tried to turn, it cracked it, or it was over tightened and it cracked or something like that. But Multimorphic are going to hook us up and get a new one, and I'll repair it, and then we'll have some super sick accordion action.
An engineering marvel, indeed.
It really is. It's an incredible engineering marvel and an incredible topper. I just figured I should show that too because I was messing with it earlier and it was fun.
Yeah, Pat the Weirdo, totally. It's a big month for pinball.
It's the best of times, it's the worst of times.
Nah, dude, operators are going to be making all sorts of cash because they're going to buy all sorts of new pinball games and have new games for people to enjoy.
Awesome. Well, it's about that time
Yep.
to send everyone to District 82 to cheer on your state
Yeah, oh, here.
for the national championship. Whose state will win? Who
old
do y'all guess is gonna win? Pick a state, any state.
Georgia. Dalton. Dalton's going to win.
I'm going with Texas.
I'll go with that.
Everything's bigger in Texas, including the scores.
Including your flippers.
Oh,
I'll go
got
with
4-inch flippers in Texas.
Missouri. Michigan. Ooh. Yeah. Jared August.
I wonder who's playing from California.
It is probably Andre.
Yeah. Okay, I want Andre to
National
win. If Dalton doesn't win, I want Andre
Hold
to
on,
win.
I don't know that for sure. I just am guessing.
I mean, I would assume too, because Andre's great. He beats me.
If anyone knows.
Beat me many times.
South Carolina, yeah. Go Fred Richardson, repping South Carolina.
I want my home state to win, or Georgia, because I want Dalton to win. So, one or the other.
I know, I'm trying to find the list.
Thanks for joining the stream. Yeah, we always raid Manu. He can take a break just for a day.
We're doing burps? No. It's or did that fall through too?
No, we're gonna go raid Dalton. Emotive's looking up who's playing for California right now, though.
I know, I couldn't find it.
Oh,
but
okay,
the first place prize is a new inbox Stern Pro pinball machine.
Steve has given away 71 subs in our channel.
71.
71. Wow.
Wow. He's
Dang.
basically the MVP.
I mean, but you know,
That's
I need somebody
amazing.
else to step up. Colin, where you at, bro?
Yeah, Colin. Pay us. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, we don't do this for free.
No, I get paid.
great.
I get paid to do this.
Yeah,
But
we do this for free.
I would do this for free.
Y'all are awesome.
Winner gets whoever wins the nationals gets a Foo Fighters?
I think they get to choose what pro they want.
Oh, wow. That's cool. Colin did pay us a beer once.
Dalton's going against Escher.
You a beer? I got like one of those beers.
We gotta head over there.
Just to let you know, one beer.
No, we shared some. I
I
took
got like, okay, so 1.5 beers. So.
All right, see you later.
Emoto's like, shut up. Okay, bye everyone. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. We're gonna go ahead and raid Fox City Pinball. So if you're on Twitch, stick around for that. I wish all these awesome players some support. Yeah, I cut them off. All right, bye y'all.